Hey friends, I'm going to give you a quick overview of Baptist history from the 1600s till now, focusing on a few key events and people along the way. We start off in 1608 with the first English Baptist church, and then in 1638, the first London Particular Baptist church. 1639, the first North American Baptist church in Providence, Rhode Island. In 1696, there's the first Baptist church in South, First Baptist Church, Charleston. In 1707, we have the First Baptist Association in Philadelphia, PA. In 1740, George Whitefield preaches in Charleston, and then they form a Baptist association in 1752.
The Charleston Baptist Association was the first Baptist association in the South, who started and led for 3 decades by Oliver Hart, who rallied the Baptists in North and South Carolina to cooperate in missions to Native Americans and in finding solutions to shared problems. They also worked together to reach new settlements and arrange funding for the education of new ministers. They would become the prototype for all subsequent Southern Baptist associations. The net effect was great, modeling for churches how to remain independent and work together to further the gospel.
Our first person of interest is John Leland. He was born in 1754, lived till 1841.
Leland was a Baptist pastor and political activist for the causes of religious freedom and abolition. He, along with James Madison, sought the removal of the religious test for public office and freedom from a state-established church. He almost ran against Madison for office until they met, and Leland was convinced Madison would carry the banner for the cause well. Leland left a positive impact on our nation's legal and religious life by fighting for religious freedom based on his conviction that for anybody to try to coerce anyone else in things of spiritual nature or in matters of conscience was indeed rape of the soul.
In 1758, the Sandy Creek, North Carolina, a separate Baptist movement started. And we have two people of interest now, both Luther Rice and John Dagg, who lived right around the same time.
Luther Rice was converted as a teen, so he and like-minded peers studied the scriptures and hosted a famous haystack meeting. This was a prayer meeting that asked for God's blessing on the formation of an international mission sending agency. This became a reality shortly after he and Adoniram Judson petitioned congregational leadership. On the mission field, he became convinced of baptism by immersion and returned to fundraise as Baptist. His work forming a sending agency became the inspiration for the Southern Baptist Convention's Foreign Mission Board. John Dagg was a Baptist pastor, theologian, and denominational leader. He pastored churches in Virginia and Pennsylvania. In the latter, Dagg served in various mission-sending agencies. He eventually served at Mercer University in Georgia as president and as professor of theology. He resigned for health problems, but his teachings lived on in his Manual of Theology and Treatise of Church Order. These saw widespread use in the 19th century theological training, and interest was recently renewed in the late 20th century.
In 1796, John Taylor's preaching began the Second Great Awakening. And another person of interest is Sarah Judson. She was born in 1803, lived till 1845.
Sarah Judson was eventually the wife of Adoniram Judson, the famous Burmese missionary. Sarah was notable in her own right, though. She was very intelligent, excelling in school and demonstrating an aptitude in writing poetry. Her poetry introduced her to her first husband, George, who initially took their family to Burma to minister to the Karen tribe. After George's untimely death, Sarah continued sharing the gospel and teaching in Bible schools. After Adoniram Judson's wife passed, he and Sarah married, but Sarah only lived another year. She is remembered as a courageous missionary, skilled translator, and evangelist to many.
And then in 1814, the Triennial Convention formed. In 1821, Baptists appoint Lot Carey as the first black missionary. Basil Manley Jr. is our next person of interest. He was born in 1825, lived till 1892.
Basil Manley Jr. was the son of an esteemed Baptist pastor and university president. After graduate school at Princeton, he served the denomination until he became one of the 4 founding faculty members of Southern Seminary. During the Civil War, he served as president of Georgetown College, but returned to Southern when it reopened. Manley specialized in Old Testament studies and also had a hand in writing over 40 hymns. His legacy is as a founder of Southern Seminary, a faithful defender of the Bible's divine inspiration, and the author of Southern Seminary's hymn, Soldier of Christ in Truth Arrayed.
In 1830, Baptists disfellowshipped the Campbellites.
Campbellites were a religious following after the teachings and personality of Alexander Campbell. He taught no creed but the Bible, and resisted agreeing to Baptist confessions of faith, though he practiced baptism by immersion. Campbell started out preaching an ancient gospel that he taught all Christians could and should believe, but eventually became hyper-sectarian, claiming only people baptized in their churches are true Christians. Baptists also came to understand he was teaching baptismal regeneration and redefining other key biblical doctrines. The separation from the Campbellites was beneficial for the purity of the gospel and the integrity of Baptist churches.
And then two people of interest, both B.H. Carroll and James Gambrell, were two names of Southern Baptist life in the Southwest.
B.H. Carroll came to know the Lord through a revival meeting at age 21 and spent most of his life serving Southern Baptists in the church, denomination, and university. At age 61, he was struck with a renewed passion to train men for ministry, but it seems impossible based on his age and fading health. He raised funds by writing letters to friends and partnered with Baylor University to start a theological seminary in 1905. His partnership was brief, and Carroll subsequently founded the Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in 1908. He is remembered today as raising a banner for the theological training of men in the Southwest against financial and personal odds. James B. Gambrell was converted at 15 and went into ministry after serving in the Civil War. He was ordained and preached at a multiracial Mississippi church. He went on to lead other churches and become the editor of the Baptist Standard. Gambrell used his influence to advocate temperance, good citizenship, education, and good social conditions as byproducts of the gospel. He served as a professor at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary until elected executive secretary of the Consolidated Board of the Baptist General Convention of Texas. He served 6 years until his election as president of the Southern Baptist Convention in 1917. He is remembered favorably as a convention president and advocate for social reform as a gospel byproduct.
In 1845, the SBC forms with a Foreign and Home Mission Board. Then in 1859, the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary was founded. Right after Southern's founding, the Civil War began, and E.Y. Mullins was born, who would later become a famous SBTS president.
E.Y. Mullins was a native Texan who moved to Louisville to be trained for missionary service. He graduated top of class, but never went abroad because of shortage of funding. Instead, he married and worked as the Associate Secretary of the Southern Baptist Foreign Mission Board, and later as a pastor in Baltimore and Massachusetts. In late 1898, Mullins was asked to serve as president of Southern Seminary and assumed the role the following year. He was driving force in the relocation and upgrade of Southern's campus and a massive fundraising effort for the school in 1919. He wrote influentially on what he esteemed as core doctrines of Christianity and was a framer of the Baptist Faith and Message 1925. His legacy is enigmatic because he is unclear about doctrines which became flashpoints for Southern Baptists later. Both conservatives and moderates would go on to claim him in the conservative resurgence.
During this early years, Crawford Toy was dismissed from SBTS in 1879. First Lottie Moon Christmas offering was in 1888.
Lottie Moon was a short-statured, bold, and dedicated Christian missionary to the Chinese people for 39 years. She wrote to the Baptist Foreign Mission Board pleading for an offering to increase the personnel and funding for the Chinese mission. The response was an annual December offering since the year 1888, where 100% of the donations go to missionaries on the field. The fund was later named in her honor at the suggestion of Annie Armstrong, another notable female Southern Baptist missionary. This has benefited the Southern Baptist missionary force tremendously all across the globe.
Alberto Diaz was sent to Cuba as an SBC missionary in 1890. Dale Moody, another person of interest, was born in 1915.
Dale Moody was a Texas native who made a profession of faith as a youth. He began pastoring at 17 and quickly enrolled for theological education. He studied with many notable scholars and eventually obtained a Doctor of Philosophy from Oxford. He secured a teaching position at Southern Seminary for 36 years starting in 1948. He taught an impressive breadth of theology courses, but ended his career with early retirement because of a controversy regarding whether a Christian could lose their salvation. He articulated in his book, The Word of Truth, a summary of Christian doctrine based on biblical revelation, that a true believer could lose their salvation. This controversy haunted him but he did not back down. He even suggested the seminary's abstracted principles be changed to allow his viewpoint. Moody's career was impressive, but his doctrinal controversy at the end hurt the seminary's and convention's fidelity to scripture and confessional education.
Then in 1925, the Southern Baptists adopt the cooperative program in Baptist Faith and Message. Adrian Rogers was born in 1931.
Adrian Rogers was pastored in Florida till 1972 when he was called to preach at Bellevue Baptist in Memphis, Tennessee. The church experienced unprecedented growth in his 33 years there, from 9 to 29,000 members. He broadcasted his sermons weekly and toured the world conducting religious crusades. He was most notably a leader through the Southern Baptist conservative resurgence. He served reluctantly as the convention's president 3 times and actively appointed conservative leaders to committees, securing many victories for the conservatives. Rogers accurately reflected later that the conservative resurgence will likely be his life's most significant and long-lasting work.
Shortly after that, Billy Graham crusades began in 1949. In 1952, Bill Wallace was martyred in China, and in 1961, Ralph Elliott published his Message of Genesis.
Ralph Elliott, a professor at Midwestern Seminary, published The Message of Genesis in 1961. In it, he used a historical critical hermeneutic and dismissed the truthfulness of a historical Adam, a worldwide flood, and Mosaic authorship as merely religious truth. This evoked a strong response from conservatives. This was one of the many doctrinal concerns the convention had about the seminary's curriculum, and led the convention to revise the Baptist Faith and Message in 1963 in an effort to gauge and codify Southern Baptist beliefs. This moment was beneficial retrospectively because his book exposed doctrinal error being covertly funneled into churches through seminaries.
In 1963, the Baptist Faith and Message was revised. Then in 1969 to 1971, the controversy over infallibility grew in the SBC. In 1979, Adrian Rogers was elected, starting the conservative revolution. In 1985, the Southern Baptist Convention in Dallas was a watershed moment.
This was a watershed moment in the Southern Baptist Convention because the moderates gave their hardest push to overcome the conservatives' plan to replace the trustee boards with conservative members via the presidency. Beforehand, newspaper articles, advertisements, and countless personal letters circulated the country to rally support on both sides. 45,519 messengers gathered from across the nation, many sleeping in cars and campers to cast their vote. W. A. Criswell preached a famous sermon, Whether We Live or Die, at the pastors' conference, which rallied the conservatives. The result was another conservative victory and a promising future for those fighting for the inerrancy of Scripture.
1991 was the first Cooperative Baptist Fellowship meeting, and in 1993, Moeller was appointed president at Southern Seminary. In 1995, the Racial Reconciliation Statement was passed in the Southern Baptist Convention, and in 2000, the Baptist Faith and Message was revised to reassert inerrancy. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you learned something about Baptist history.